Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. I appreciate you joining me today. Kenny Gibbs, Evil Kenny, property master for Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe, is joining me for this episode. This is an interview that I've been wanting to have for years, and I am privileged that he's sitting down with me to talk about this. Before we bring him in, if you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, click that like button. It makes a difference with YouTube and will continue to help the show grow. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And if you click the bell icon, we will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this episode will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. This is a pre-recorded episode, so the moderators will not be taking questions for Kenny in this show. If we're lucky, we'll have him back in the future so that you can ask him questions about specific props and the process in creating, so much of the magic that occurred through production. But I think I cover the basics for the first stint of what will hopefully be another interview in the future, and I really hope that you enjoy it. So let's bring in Kenny. Kenny Gibbs, property master for Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and Stargate Universe. Sir, it is a privilege to have you. I have been wanting to have this conversation for a really long time, and so I'm grateful that you've taken some time out of your weekend to spend it with us. It means a lot.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great being about part of Stargate all those years, and yeah, it was my honor to be on the show.
So this is, if I understand it right, this is kind of where you cut your teeth in your field. Is that right?
Correct. It was. It was. I was in the industry for probably a couple of years before I landed the Stargate job, and it was just through coincidence that it ended up being probably the longest running series that I'd ever been on, and probably the closest match I've had to anything that I've really wanted to do.
Wow. Tell us about what that journey means for you to have such a rock solid baseline for such a quality program at the start of your career. I imagine it set you up for all the do's and don'ts for everything that came after. And, in terms of knowing people and in terms of working with people and getting what you need out of people while making sure that they get what they need and all the politics involved in everything.
It like I said, I fell into it. It was just coincidence and then luck, sheer luck. I ended up on the show. The previous prop master had left, took most of his crew with him, so I was a fresh start with a new prop master. And I think actually the prop master that I ended up starting to work for was the assistant prop master in previous seasons, but I was brand new, brought on a few people that I knew, that I met along the couple of years that I'd been working in the industry, and the rest is history. It was great. I mean, every day on that show was a blessing. The crew was great. The cast, producers, it was all like an instant family.
Wow.
I think I came on season 4 or 5, something like that. So they had already had a few years working together, and so I was the newbie. But they embraced me so well, and yeah, it was. I mean, but those were back in the days when we did 22 episodes a season, so it was a long run. But it was like I said, everything was professionally done. They were so nice about things. I mean, one of the things we would brag about is that um, by the time you got to the end of the week, because of shooting schedules, because of having to push your shooting your call time, because of again running longer days or whatever incidents would happen. Um, sometimes by Friday, your start time would be like, 10 a.m. or 2 in the afternoon. So you'd end up working into your Saturdays.
Oh,
But we were one of the only crews that would always be consistently working at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and would be just kind of waving to people and saying, sorry, like going home on Friday at 7:30 to enjoy our weekends, to enjoy our life. But life with Stargate was awesome.
yeah, it seemed like what the conversations that I've had with everyone is that they recognized that they had families outside of work, that one that the work fed into fed the personal life didn't feed the work, and so there was. I think it probably is indicative of one of the reasons that they were able to go 17 seasons because they didn't burn themselves the hell out.
That's right. No, they didn't. It was great. I mean, doing SG-1, and then doing the two movies, and then Atlantis, and then Universe. It was we just expected to go on and on. We didn't think it would end, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that fun. It was that much like, going for it, that it was yeah.
How how
Sometimes you don't even have words for it because it was great. It was so
right?
great.
No, it's who gets to work on a job for, of that magnitude for a decade plus, It's it's pretty uncommon in that industry.
Very uncommon. Very uncommon. It doesn't happen anymore, and even back then, it was pretty uncommon. So, unless you worked on a soap opera or something, but
Right.
this was high end science fiction, and we did a lot of locations, we did a lot of studio work, we did everything, right? We weren't shy, and the writers weren't shy, and producers weren't shy to stretch the boundaries a bit. But we were lucky to do what we did, and the cast was awesome about it all the time.
Were you 8 or 9 years old when you said woke up one morning and said, "I want to be a props guy when I grow up"? Were you a fan of movie and TV? What was your impetus for getting into this?
Um, when I was young, I just loved movies. I loved TV, but I really did fall in love with movies. Almost every weekend, I'd go grocery shopping with my parents, and we went to this. I'm from the East Coast originally. I'm from Montreal, so we went to a little shopping center, and back then it was like, okay, well, you guys go shopping. Can I go watch a movie? And they go, yeah, sure. So I would go to the theater that was connected to the mall, and I would go watch a movie every weekend by myself, and just
Aw,
be
by
so giddy
yourself.
about the fact of sitting in a theater and just watching movies. And that got me hooked. That really got me hooked. And then, yeah, later on in life, I just said, okay, this is what I want to do.
Wow. Wow. Now, David Sinclair, was he who you worked with at the start of the career with Stargate?
Correct. He was my first prop master on Stargate. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And tell us about like what he expected and what a typical day was for you in the beginning.
Well, like I said, David did actually take over for the previous prop master. He got bumped up, I think, from his assistant prop master status. And again, David was just keen on continuing with the show because he knew how good it was for him. We were basically strangers. He had interviewed me about, I guess, 6 months before I had the job, or 4 months, and
Wow.
we kind of hit it off in the interview. And I said, okay, sure, you're going to take a chance on me. Let's go, because I'd never at that point in my career, I'd never run a set before. I was always an assistant to the assistant prop master on set. So I guess he saw my resume, and just word of mouth. That's how it works in this industry a lot. Had heard that I can run a set, so he took me on. And again, I guess because of word of mouth, he thought and hoped I could handle it, and I just fit right in there. Like I said, it was also mostly because of the crew and the cast. They just made me feel like this is your home. We accept everybody, and yeah, it wasn't hard at all. In fact, it was fun. Most days it would be like going to work with a smile on my face and be like, why are
Ah,
you smiling so much? I go, look where we are, look
yeah,
what we're doing, right? And that
yeah,
never wore off.
yeah. You said high end sci-fi. I can't imagine what it must have been like to have people like Richard Houdolan and Ken Rebel and Bridget McGuire and James C.D. Robbins, churning this stuff out, and then you guys having the opportunity to take it and bring it to life. I mean, I have right here, not to mention all the stuff behind me here, but
Oh yeah.
so I mean, it's just that to be able to go to work and produce this, and this is the second iteration of this. This is from 200,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
and the stuff that you guys had to churn out week after week. Um, I don't know how you kept up with it. So I guess it's just the proper infrastructure, and the willingness to give this a shot. And if this doesn't work this way, we'll figure out another way to do it. I'm guessing.
Well, it's like you said, we had brilliant minds, brilliant, inventive, and talented minds. Just like behind you, you have the Nakweta generator. That's
Yeah.
Richard and yes, especially James. But the key behind a lot of those props were our props and model shop. Our model builders were world class. Gord Bellamy, who basically was their leader and the foreman and became the head foreman for the shop, was amazing, amazing. And again, we had literally engineers working for us, engineering a lot of these props, electrical engineers putting together all of the innards. We did everything ourselves, like a lot of shops these days, and uh, a bit in the past would
Mm,
have to farm out all of that stuff to have it done. We did everything in house. Every bit of it was done by Stargate model builders.
wow. Was it um, a necessity to keep everything internal, or was it that you guys just wanted to build out and had um, the leadership in a position to want to build out everything internally, or was it just did it have to do with time?
You hit it. You hit it right there. It's time. The necessity of having input every day, maybe twice a day, on the progress or sometimes failure of ideas. You need everything in house, and that way we're able to keep our finger on the pulse of how the build was going, if it was progressing in the direction that uh, the director would want, and also it was feasible to work on set. That was part of the biggest thing, is that you know sometimes it's a nice picture, but and then you say, how is it going to work when people start handling it and throwing it around? And so that's part of the reason everything needed to be in house, so we could see if it was going to pass or fail right away.
I want to go back to your first season. Uh, you once told me in an interview for the PropWorks catalogs the story about the armbands, the Atlantic armbands from season four's upgrades.
Yeah.
Tell me about the process of can we use them as a case study for something that you have to refine on the go? Would you mind sharing that story?
The armbands for upgrades. Yeah, that was my first challenging experience on set. Again, um, translating a prop that started off as an idea and then a photo to an actual feasible prop that these our actors would wear. Sometimes we didn't have a lot of time to test things, right? Or your test was basically the first day of camera. So with these armbands, supposed to give our characters powers, alien powers that would increase their strength and their speed, and they looked pretty, they were great, but they weren't made to be worn more than just holding your arm like that or holding your arm straight out because I remember we were doing a rehearsal and Rick just made a gesture like that to pointing his arm, and the thing flew right off his arm across the room. And all I could do is, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, but I mean, you have to find a way. So what we tried to do, and they had an electrical source in it, right? It had a power source inside. So at first we had to hardwire it, and I mean, one of the first scenes I was with Rick on set, and we were up in the, I think the first scene that we ever played it was up in the, it was up in the, was it in the, wasn't in the control room. It was a briefing room. It was up in the briefing room, and we had to literally hardwire. It was hardwired down his arm, up his shoulders, down his leg, and I had the control for it to keep the tracer going. And then it's the point I just wired out, and then I was like, okay, it's too much wire. It's we had to figure it out on set. Just okay, well, how are we gonna do this? Well, cut the wire. We made the connection shorter to go from the actual LED to the battery, and we made it a bit bulkier, but then at least he was able to turn it on and off himself, and there was no more hardwire. I was like, okay, phew, there's one problem. But then it was the fact that it didn't have much memory, so it wouldn't cling on to their arms. So any sudden movement and it would fly off. So literally in between takes, I had to figure out what to do, and we were actually keeping them cooled in a cooler. I had elastics around them to keep them, in the shape that we needed them to be, and keep them cool. And it worked as long as it worked. But yeah, it was the whole episode was a challenge, and actually that's where I got my nickname from.
Yes. Okay. So, Evil Kenny. I wanted to know about the moniker, where that came from. So that was this.
Well, that was from that episode. It was from that prop. It was actually, again, speaking of people that who treated me like family from day one, it was Martin Wood. Martin Wood still is one of the most influential people that I've met during film. I love the guy. He's yeah, he's still close to my, did a film with him a couple years ago, went to Guam with him just to be with him. Anyways, Martin did that episode, and he saw the struggles. He knew, and again, he's the kind of director who's like, he'll always try to help you and always try to, you know, get the most out of not just his actors but his crew. So what had happened is that we had a couple incarnations of this prop, and what it had to do at the end, we built a mechanical one that would actually just because okay, sorry, the whole premise of the prop is once it was on their arm, the alien technology would not let go. So we had to find a way to make it let go. And when to show this on camera, we built a separate model that was just mechanical that would just basically open up like a clamshell. So I said, okay, well, we got this one because, come on.
Sure.
So we brought in the prop, or I brought in the prop, put it on the floor. We were getting ready for the shot. And then he said, okay, just camera's rolling. Whenever you're ready, Kenny. I said, okay, let's go. And I flicked the switch and nothing happened.
Oh,
and I said, okay, let's reset. And I switch off and I flicked the switch and nothing happened. And I just gave up. I just dropped the remote and I walked away. And everybody, they're good hearted. They started laughing. And then I said, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I said, like, okay, we'll try it again. We'll just get our builders in here and figure it out. And then Martin was just trying to lighten the mood. And he goes, okay, Evil Kenny, bring in that evil prop of yours. Bring in that evil prop of yours again. Let's try it again. So after that, I became Evil Kenny.
It's you are you are faced with challenges in your life, some of them professional, some of them personal, where you come down to the wire and you have no choice but to get through it. You have no choice. There are thousands of dollars now riding on you because you are the one who has got to get this thing pushed up the hill, and it's got to happen. You can't just say, okay, everyone go home. Kenny can figure it out overnight. You've got to get it done. You have minutes. And wow, man, that's just extraordinary. That's wild. And you're dealing with something that's electronic and form fitting on a person's where a person can flex, and just like you said, you have to get it to work just as long as it's on camera, and then it doesn't need to work anymore. God.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of R&D involved, and again, that was probably one of the rare times it didn't work. One of our props failed because, like I said, we do have a super talented model shop, but we did, and yeah, it was one of the rare times that a prop. Um, I actually I think that was the season that, and I'll remember this, Gord. I think that was actually the season that Gord Bellamy went off to do a feature. He was taken away to the feature world for a little while, so.
Okay.
We lost his input on props like that for about a season, but we got him back. We got him back, and we got back on the road.
Wow, that's just extraordinary. Do you have any other memories of specific props from that production? I mean, I am blessed to have. That's a replica of that
Okay.
Naquita reactor, but it's all based on just visual, no measurements. But do you have any memories of some of the props from the show over the years? Some that you just loved to work with, or you thought was a cool idea. I'm curious to know what your favorites were.
Well,
Out of the
back in the early
hundreds.
days, but that out of the hundreds, yeah, the Naquita reactor was one of them, definitely. We dealt with a lot of the alien props, dealing with Chris Judge's props, the Jaffa, the blasters, and the Zats. But I think it's bit when we got into the later days, and we had the replica blasters. Those were really cool guns. Those were really we did a great job engineering those, and they were pretty good. They were really
You
cool.
talking about the silver ones with the switch that would drop, or the mouth that would drop down on it?
Yes.
Yeah, those were
Yeah,
metal. Absolutely
that's right.
glorious.
Yeah, we had CNC machines. We had all the tools. We had all the tools at our disposal to make anything we needed.
Can you tell me about evolving the staff weapon as the show went along? Because and the Zat gun as well. That was, I know you started off pneumatic and then went to you guys designed an internal power system for them so you could battery load them. Can you tell me about those weapons a little bit?
Yeah, again, sure. That's again the evolving of technology, and also some of our crew. We ended up being lucky enough to employ some electrical and mechanical engineers, and they just basically you know said, well, we can do this better, and it's like, okay, let's do it better. And they re-engineered, especially the ZAT. Like you said before, it was an air compression. It was an air compression system that would make the ZAT go up and down, and the head cock back to fire. But yes, they changed it into pneumatics, and it was all battery powered. So it was much lighter because it didn't have the pneumatic tube in it and everything. Um, and we did the same thing with the staff weapon. So it became lighter and more reliable. At the fact that the engineering was amazing, right? Especially when you would at a point, especially with the staff weapon, when we first had those, the head of the staff weapon would not open. It was just all CG. But then we actually made ones that would actuate and open up, and that was for us. Even as prop, as props people, we'd be like, oh, look at our prop. It's so amazing, right? So again, evolution of technology, and it was great. It was great.
I didn't know the staff had a CG open at the beginning. How long did that go on?
Oh yeah, for quite a few years, because that was just a bit beyond us. I mean, we yeah, again, to get that kind of air pressure pneumatics through the long shaft of it wasn't possible in the early days. So that came afterwards.
Wow. Wow. I've been fortunate enough to see the one that Chris had at the end. And the batteries, if I'm not mistaken, went into the Cobra head. And then just the front end went and it's just like the brain power involved in creating a system that would allow that to work. It's just mind blowing. I would sit there and I would play with it, and it's just like, I can't believe that this is actually this. They actually made it. I mean, the only thing missing is that it doesn't fire. So or smoke.
But it fooled a lot of people. It fooled a lot of people. Believe me, a lot of people when they saw that head charging and just open up, they were like, some people just jump back at the first time they're looking at it and seeing it. So it was
Wow.
really it was amazing to work with.
And it had a problem with, especially when you had a lot of them, with bowing over the years.
Again, the we had all different versions. We had light versions for Chris and the Jaffa to run with, the stunt versions as well. We had to make lighter, but at the same time flexible versions so that they wouldn't break, right? So we used a mandrel and urethane to keep its flexibility. But again, some of the stunt ones that we needed to be a little softer, they would bow, or we'd call them noodles, because you'd start running with them and you'd see them,
Right.
and at a point you couldn't do much about it, especially if at the end of that shot they were, like I said, Chris was running in and then had to clear
Oh,
people out of his way. So we
yeah.
had to give him the stunt one. So it was like, which one do we give him? We would be testing them on the side, shaking them, and how does this look? Oh, okay, let's try this one. How's this? Oh, that one looks better. So yeah, we had a lot of different models and a lot of different for a lot of different situations that we had to film with.
That's just wild. The 200th episode, um,
Mm.
where this little guy, the cube, came from, and a few others. I'm curious, did you have any uh did you take part in any of the filming of the puppets down in LA? Did you go for that shoot?
No, unfortunately, I didn't.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
We just built everything up north, up here in Canada, and we just sent it down.
Wow. It,
Yeah.
tell me about that 200th episode. That Christopher Judge said, you had 3 and 4 episodes basically going all at the same time for that, in terms of the amount of work. And he said everyone that he saw had a smile on their face because they knew what this meant. They knew that the
Yeah.
fans had made this show go on for as long as it was, and that this work was a celebration.
It really was. Again, you can't say it so many times that being with the crew and the cast, it was a blessing every day. And you know, just doing that 200th episode, we knew that we were hitting a milestone that not a lot of people have ever hit in their professional careers, as an actor or as a crew member, right? Floating in and out and being part of the industry, that it's working on a successful series is very hard. It's very
Yeah.
hard. You can't even judge what's going to happen, right? Like, oh well, yeah, well, season 3, season 4, we'll get another one, and then all of a sudden, season 5, you're done. But for us, we just kept going and going. It was the strength of the writers. It was the strength of the cast. And again, it was the strength of the fans loving the show. And yeah, working on that 200th episode was amazing. Yeah, we enjoyed every minute. It's yeah, with a smile. Again, with a smile.
Absolutely. What challenges did Atlantis bring, or was it more of the same kind of process, or were there unique challenges that Atlantis brought you, the years that you were doing it?
Atlantis was its own little entity too, because they had a different premise where we called our SG-1s saving the world every 47 and a half minutes, whatever. Atlantis was a little different because they were floating through space, right? So a,
Yeah.
a lot of what they had their challenges weren't earthbound, right? It was
Yeah.
all alien, and they had a little bit. I think for them, their storylines were a little harder, because the writers had to invent a lot, um, you know, a lot of different situations and ideals that weren't part of SG-1's kind of deal. Even though we did always go through the gate and visit alien worlds, all of their world was alien, traveling through space, and then the dilemma of not being able to go home and not knowing when they could go home. So yeah, that the Atlantis was their own little entity. It had its own little challenges, but good challenges.
It wasn't as easy to do Earthbound episodes because you had to have an excuse for them to go back to the Milky Way to do them. And they did them, but they were far more rare.
Correct. It was the same kind of thing that we ran into with Atlantis, where Atlantis,
oh, you mean Universe?
They were space. Oh, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Universe. Universe. They were, couldn't go home. They were out there, and everything that they had was a challenge. It was kind of like being back in the going back to the original Star Trek, where you're out there for the first time and you're meeting alien life forms that you don't know are friendly or not. And yeah, it's just I love that interaction that they had with each other, and just the peril, modern day peril of like, okay, what are we doing here? Do we know what we're doing? And yeah, it was great to build props for those kind of shows, because we were inventing our own things. We were just, well, let's invent something that looks like that looks like a tricorder. No, we can't do tricorder, but we're going to do right. Everything was invention, everything. So it was great. It was, the minds were churning a lot with those two series.
Yeah, and you could use Earthbound technology and hide them inside them, like with the
what do you got?
these guys.
Oh yeah,
it's an HP Palm Pilot in there,
correct.
And this one
Correct.
actually isn't. This one is just got a light source. The battery's dead. I need to fix it. But there's so much cannibalizing of what we have here to make it into something else.
That's right. That's what we did. That's what we're good at. It's the sets were amazing too. Some of the sets you walk onto the set and you're like, okay, well, actually, I remember for when we did Universe, we had to set out a an index for them to figure out what they were doing. Okay, so they sit on the bridge. This one was the control for thrusters. This one was communication. So we literally had to put out everything for them, because they needed to know what they were doing in continuity, and we had to structure it so that it would kind of made sense for them as an actor, and also for the direction, to film.
You didn't want to fake it. You wanted to make sure that button was used for that thing only.
It's all part of it, right? It's all continuity too, right? Because then you'd hear the continuity person say, "Oh no, you didn't reach over there for the communication device last episode or last scene." So we had to keep it real, even though it was all sci-fi and all fake, but we had to keep it real, and that onus, the actors love that too, because they go, "We want this to look real," because for them, sometimes walking on some of the sets that were built, it was amazing for them. It was like something they'd never seen. So they were into it 100%.
I want to go back. I want to talk about Universe for sure. I want to go back to Atlantis briefly. I had a chance to sell the large portions of the prop collections for SG-1 in Atlantis. And one of the things that absolutely blew me away was all the Wraith stuff that you guys created. It was these. I'd love to know how you conceived of them. The sinewy, organic, muscly, just builds for everything that involved them. It looked like things had been taken out of an alien carcass from a creature from another world and wrapped around props to make them come to life in this way. And the lights and the textures, it was very it was the haptic feedback when just touching some of this stuff was just absolutely wild. Was there a process that you guys went through? Well, obviously there was a process. Tell me about the process that you guys went through for constructing this material that looked so organic.
again, it was our model builders,
Okay.
Cord Bellamy leading the way. Again, to make it look organic, it was a very time taking process. What they had to do a lot was stretch the urethane or whatever skin they would make, to stretch it out to make it into skin, wind it up, wrap it against, and we'd have to layer it on the different
Wow.
prop, whether it be a one of the devices on a race ship or one of their
Hmm.
props. So we would just have to be layers and layers of the different urethane, then coloring it
Hmm.
and heating it up to make it melt a certain way to make it look. So it was a very painstaking process. But yeah, they had the plan. They knew it would work. And again, we did have a big team at that point. The time we were starting to do Atlantis, they had a time and the crew to do the R&D to make it look really well. So yeah, a lot of it was just layering layers and layers of the polyurethane, and just yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Do Where and when would it come into play where you would decide, okay, we're going to make two of these? Because a lot of what we got, there were a lot of things that we had was twins, and then other things weren't. And I'm like, well, this, I'm guessing this was a certain size that they're not going to be able to make two of them. It's the R&D for this one, like the BFG, the big effing gun that had the big crystals on the end and the mini Naquita generator on the top of that. You're not going to make two of those. You're going to get that one right. You're going to make sure it works. At what point would you decide whether or not you would create duplicates of a piece? Was it money? Was it tactile interaction with an actor? Where did that kind of fall in?
There are a couple of reasons, but in the prop world, it's always said that one is none. So because if you have that one prop and something happens to it, whether it's in the scene because it breaks or it doesn't function, you have to have a backup. You ultimately have to have a backup. Uh, Sometimes money's involved, yes.
Okay.
Again, if it's a very large prop. Um, Other times, money's not an issue, because if it's something that has to see some action, you always have to protect your stunt performers and your actors, and you have to make a rubber version of it. So we'd always have a hero version, a hero backup, most likely, but also a stunt rubber as well. So a lot of times, if you saw something on screen, there are three different versions of it.
Wow.
But there's always, again, back in props, it's always one is none. That's our motto. So it has to be really ornate or super expensive to produce for us to only have one.
Wow.
Or it just doesn't really do much besides live in an actor's hand or be pointed or certain around. But anytime anything sees any bit of action, most likely we have to try to build some kind of stunt rubber for that scene, or for that amount of use for that prop.
Hang on just a second here. I suspect you know what this is.
I am. I do.
So this
You are.
is yes. So this is screen used, but it
Mm-hmm.
was taken from the Kino sled. So a fan bought
Mm-hmm.
these and took the half hemispheres off of the bottom of them, combined them, and then sold them online.
Wow.
It's kind of sad, but I'm also really
Yeah.
thankful that I basically have one. Um, can you talk about the R&D that went into creating something like this, which is essentially spheres upon spheres? And also the fact that you had to have some rubber ones because at one point one actor hits one over the head with it. And also a lot of the
Mhm.
times that we saw it, it wasn't real. It was in a computer.
That's right. That's right.
The
Those
Kino.
were from the days, the Kinos. Yes, those were the days where 3D printers were just coming out, and our 3D printer was the size of a small room, and it would take days for it to create something as elaborate as that. And again, we did the R&D by seeing how much of the inside could be layered, and then to create a shell around it so you could see the dimensions, so you could see the layers uh, and the detail. Um, at the same time clearing it, making a clear shell for it so you could see almost right through it. Yeah, that was the height of some of the prop building and that. And again, a lot of R&D involved. But yeah, the 3D printers made things go a long way, and it just improved the amount of props that we could produce.
Did it for something like this? Um, I imagine if it was stationary in a scene, you guys could pull it off practically in some way. Were you ever hanging it by a wire? I mean, what tricks did you use from scene to scene to pull something like this off? And I'm curious, did you examine it from scene to scene to see which method would be the most economical and most realistic looking? Is that how you approach something like that?
Well, again, we had a great team, right,
Okay.
and great lines about how we could, from how we could use these props, and what's the best and most efficient way for them to film. And that came down to our visual effects team, and
Okay.
we actually had, I think I actually still have a version of one of those. We had one of those kinos on a clear plexi rod that was, maybe 3 feet long. And whenever we needed them to fly or do anything, we cut, and we'd bring the VisFX ball in, and they would run around, and they would basically just take the pattern and path of anywhere the Kino ball had to go. So a lot of times it was, and our stage was so big, we couldn't do it on wire, and that was the only way we could really do it. So basically, it was a Kino on top of a clear plexi shaft, and then run around with it, and they would track it and add it to it after.
Wow. So then the camera would duplicate the pass uh, with the ball not there, so that the Kino could be inserted digitally. I'm guessing.
Correct.
Wow.
We would lock off the camera, and then our VisFX would come in, and they would, all of it's VisFX, right? Tracking the you have to record the camera angle, the shutter speed, and everything, and they would just run around and create the path, or try to recreate the path that was done, or that needed to happen, and the
Wow.
rest would be done in post.
Did you have any responsibility uh, with, especially near the end, with some of the fully CG aliens? There were some scenes where there were the communication stones from the show, the blue rocks. Would be sometimes there would be interaction between a live performer who was there, and an alien, or an exchange of a prop or something like that. But was that something that you guys would be called on to assist in, to do a handoff on screen, or was that more uh, digital effects would just make that seamless? I'm curious to know where you interface with them on scenes where you were dealing with creatures or objects or props that were just too complicated to make practically, and so you had to do them digitally.
Usually, any direct interaction with an alien or anything, giving a prop to an alien, it was a very intricate matter that needed to happen to put a live figure next to that a digitally processed image. Wasn't easy to do. So a lot of times for our visual effects department, they would basically just take our prop and scan it,
Okay.
and they would add everything digitally afterwards, because they couldn't marry the two at that time. They
Okay.
weren't able to marry the two. So easiest thing for them was just scan it, so there'd be no mistakes, and then they would add everything. They'd add make the turn the prop into a digital prop
Wow.
and add it to their digital sequence afterwards.
Wow. That's absolutely wild. It The technology continues to evolve, I'm sure. And I imagine there are circumstances where the stuff that you come across is be like, I wish we had this for Stargate, or we started that off on Stargate, and this has come to evolve in this direction with what we can do now. Uh, do you look back on the work that you guys did with Stargate now and never be like, man, I wish we had this then?
Like I said, we were super, super lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just the time that we were doing Stargate, and the people that ended up becoming part of the crew. But
Yeah.
we were right at the edge of just, starting to evolve with all of the technology that would help all a lot of prop crews and film crews altogether. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of things that I see now that's like, oh yeah, we did something like that or similar to that. So we weren't that far behind. We're near the end of I guess near the end of Stargate. A lot of our props were the world class props. They were world class technology. I mean, we left film and we started filming, recording digitally. So we were evolving with the world. We were just catching. We weren't catching up. We were basically some of the leaders in it. And yeah, so that is a really good question. But I don't see anything. I mean, because like I said, I mean, we've been talking about the staff weapons and the Zat guns. Everything we had evolved. Everything, all the props we had evolved. It's just because we were catching up, and not really catching up, but we were just evolving with everybody else.
Is it um, that you had time to refine something like the Zat or the staff, or was it out of necessity that those things improved, or was it that the technology was just coming along as you went, or was it a combination of all of them?
I think it was a combination of the scripts becoming a little bit more elaborate and a little bit more challenging. So we had
Yeah,
situations where we needed our props to evolve and need to do things that we hadn't them do before.
yeah.
Um, and again, we had talented people that became part of our crew that said, no, I think we can engineer that to do that. And then even with the vis effects, it's like, no, you couldn't do that before. I think we can make that happen. So everything, all of our departments, everything was evolving. And it was also because, like I said, some of the scripts became a little bit more challenging, or challenged us as prop builders and makers to have our props hold up to the timeline and make everything uh, magic.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Did your team have any involvement with the Air Force when the Air Force was had a hand in SG-1?
Absolutely, the Air Force basically went over a lot of our scripts, or a lot of basically the outline of our scripts, to make sure they were always seen in a positive light.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, the whole premise of the show is, around the Air Force, and creating the SG-1 team to travel a galaxy and travel the universe. So they had to make sure that, they were being seen in a positive light. And we always did. And we actually had one of the colonels at one point come to visit the show. It was pretty crazy. Everybody had to go through security checks, and they loved the show. They loved us. I mean, we were basically, promoting them every week, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, and then to the point where we went up to the Arctic, where they
Yeah.
let us on their nuclear subs to film Continuum. It was amazing. It was pretty. It was pretty breathtaking to be allowed to do that, just because of our entertainment, our show that was entertaining millions of people. Um, we were pretty. We were given carte blanche, almost carte blanche by the Air Force.
So you were a part of the Arctic team.
Correct. Yes,
Oh
Martin brought me
man.
up there. We had a small crew.
Yeah.
Again, filming up in the Arctic wasn't very easy, but we made it happen. We were all pulled together, and it was great. They actually had me in one scene with Rick when we were coming out of the when because in that one scene where we finally show Richard Dean Anderson finding Michael Shanks. I was one of the other, I guess you would call them, Arctic Force uh, operative that was with him, that paired up with him, because we just, we had to do what we needed to do to make it work. So yeah,
Wow, that's cool, man. Is it one of those life-altering experiences going into an environment like that is so barren, and coming away like, yeah, I was up there for a little while and we filmed a movie, you know? Who can say that? You know?
Again, yeah, like I said, it was a blessing and an honor to work on the show because yes, we did a lot of things, especially that a lot of crews would never ever get a chance to do. So yeah, it was one of those things like, hey, you want to go to the Arctic and go aboard a nuclear sub to film the movie? Let me think about it. Sure, yeah, I'll be there.
Right? Oh my gosh! Wow. So that's just wild. If Stargate came
Yeah.
back, I know that Amazon and MGM want to do a fourth something, either a series or a movie. They keep waffling back and forth from the information that I'm hearing. And the Vancouver team was invited to make it happen again. Would you clear your schedule?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. Yeah, to get that team back together, or at least
Yeah.
as much as we could, it would be magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely clear my schedule to take that on again.
You guys.
It'd be like going back home. It would
Yeah.
really be like going back home.
Yeah. Absolutely. You guys did yourselves proud, and you said, with 22 episodes in some years, in other years you guys were doing 40. I mean, you had Dean Goodine, and you had a team with you to to fill that stuff out. But as Stargate Productions, the whole umbrella, 40 episodes for 3 years, 120 shows in 3 years produced. That is mad. No one will ever do
Yeah.
that again.
It was yeah, I can say this when Dean Goodine came aboard, again, another magician, another true prop master. He stretched things out and he was I remember talking to him or just seeing him after a day in the boardroom, a full day, because at one point he was prop mastering both SG-1 and
Yeah.
Atlantis. So he was in there all day. And I would see his eyes and he'd be a little glazed. He'd just look at me, talking, and all the information running around. I'd go, it's okay, I'll talk to you later. Whatever I had to say, it doesn't matter. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, but even him, he'd still have a smile on his face. It was still like, it was still a great experience to do it. But yes, we pushed the limits.
You are on the frontier of creating um, things that are extraordinarily cool to behold on television, and also pushing the limits of what you as creative people can do. I had a conversation with Ivana Vosick a few weeks ago, and she said to me how surprised she was that, initially she was like, I'm out of ideas after this. I don't know what else I can possibly think of. And that the more she would do, the more her brain would provide to her more ideas. It was like a muscle. It just kept on churning, and the more it churned, the even more it churned after that.
Richard Hugh Dillon was a lucky man.
Man.
So smart, and he also had brilliant minds like Ivana working with him. And again, just like you said, she came up with idea after idea, and you would look
Yeah.
at it. We would sometimes walk onto the sets, and we'd be like looking around, like, whose mind did this come out of, right?
Yeah.
And again, she would just kept coming up with it, right? She just kept coming up, and sometimes it's like musicians, right? It's like a muse that feeds you, and
Mm-hmm.
just you
Mm-hmm.
know, it just inspires you, and that's what Ivana did for the Stargate franchise. She was amazing.
Yeah. The number of people that it really takes a village. The number of people that have to come together with their specific set of talents to pull this stuff off week after week, season after season. You guys really did yourselves proud. This has been a privilege to get to know you a little better. I'd love to come to have you back on with fans. I know that fans there are fans who are watching who are like, I want to know about this prop. I want to know about that prop. I want to know about that day. I'd love to have you back in the future to explore some more memories. This is so cool, Kenny.
was my pleasure to be here. Thank you. And yeah, let's visit that. Let's talk about it. Hopefully, I'm you know not working my proverbial butt off and have some time to do that. But yeah, I'll make the time. It'd be an honor to come back.
It means a lot to have you, sir, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, David.
My thanks, my immense thanks to Evil Kenny for joining me in this episode of Dial the Gate. He and I talked years ago for PropWorks for a brief interview that I did with him in one of the PropWorks Stargate's auction catalogs. And I only had like 15 minutes with him, and I felt so bad because I wanted to go into further detail with him. The guy is a maestro. The stuff that him and his team have been able to create, I mean, just that they are so responsible for everything that so much of everything that we love from these shows, and the fact that they were able to use the technology as it evolved to continue to create so much amazing stuff just blows my mind. They are magicians. So thank you again, Kenny, for coming on. And my thanks to Rob Fournier for passing along the email which made this interview possible. So hopefully we will have him back in the future so that you all in the live chat can ask him in real time specific questions about some of the props that you love. But it was just tremendous to have him. My thanks to my moderating team, Tracy, Anthony, Summer, Jeremy, Reese. You guys continue to make the show possible for me week after week in churning out these episodes. My thanks to my producer, Linda Gate Gabber Fury, for continuing to have my back throughout the entire process here, and my web developer, Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He enables our website to keep on keeping a record of all of the content that we have. We have a number of interviews coming your way before Dial the Gate concludes its third season. So go to dialthegate.com to see who's coming down the line. So everyone who has confirmed an interview and availability is going to be listed there, even if they're not scheduled yet. I just want to keep you guys all in the loop on what it is that we're doing and creating here over at the Stargate Oral History Project. So I appreciate you tuning in. My thanks once again to Kenny Gibbs for his time, and I appreciate all of you for watching. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and I'll see you on the other side.